Think about the last time you lost a good worker. Not the one who was never going to make it, the one who surprised you. The one who showed up, did the work, had potential, and then one day they were gone. Now think about what you told yourself when that happened. Probably something like, they just didn't want to put the work in, or this generation doesn't have what it takes. I spent 20 years in this industry. I have heard every version of that story, and I'm telling you, most of the time, it's wrong. They didn't leave because they couldn't handle the work. They left because they showed up with one set of expectations and you led them with a completely different set. And neither side ever talked about it. That's what this episode is about. Not a crash course in generational theory, not a lecture on diversity and inclusion. This is about what happens on a job site when people leading the work assume everyone thinks the way that they do, and the cost of that assumption in an industry that cannot afford to lose another person it doesn't have to. We're going to cover 4 key aspects that you need to understand when managing across the generational divides. I'm Angelo Suntries. This is the human side of construction. Let's get into it. Number 1, this is not a generations problem. It's an expectations problem. The industry loves to frame this as old guys versus new guys. Boomers don't understand Gen Z. Gen Z doesn't respect the culture. That framing is lazy, and it's a dead end, because it turns an operational issue into a blame game. The real issue is expectations. Every generation enters the workforce shaped by different forces: family, economics, technology, what they saw growing up. That's not a flaw, that's reality. The problem shows up when both sides walk onto a job site with completely different assumptions about how things should work, and nobody names it. A veteran superintendent expects a young worker to keep their head down, learn by watching, and prove themselves before asking questions. The young worker expects clear direction, feedback, and to understand why things are done a certain way. Neither expectation is wrong, but when they collide without a conversation, frustration builds on both sides, and frustration is one of the fastest ways to lose someone. This episode puts it simply. Frustration and disappointment are 2 productivity and relationship killers, and they both come from unmet expectations. That's the lens to use. Not what's wrong with these kids, but where is the gap between what I expect and what they expect? And how do I close it before it costs me? Now that we've named the real issue, let's break down where the gaps actually show up on job sites. 3 separate and distinct categories where generational differences create operational friction: how we live, how we work, and how we communicate. First, how we live. The bar for what a normal life looks like has changed. Many experienced people in this industry came from backgrounds where you worked hard because there was no alternative. You provided the basics and you didn't complain. Younger workers grew up in a different world. That doesn't make them soft, it makes their baseline different. When you expect someone to accept conditions that your generation tolerated without question and they push back, that's not entitlement, that's a shift in what normal means. Leaders who can't see the difference will keep interpreting normal behavior as a character flaw. Second, how we work. Older generations sought stability and long-term careers at one company. Younger workers prioritize flexibility, growth pathways, and purpose. Construction historically offers one track. You show up, you work hard, maybe you get promoted in 10 years. If your retention strategy is "this is how we've always done it," you are competing with one hand tied behind your back. Lastly, how we communicate. This is where it breaks down fastest on a job site. A foreman who only communicates through barking orders or assumes everyone reads the whiteboard the same way is going to lose connection with workers who are wired for instant messaging, visual communication, and direct feedback loops. It doesn't mean you need to run your job site on group chats. It means you need to be aware that the way you deliver information might not be the way it's being received. The next time you're frustrated that a message isn't landing with a younger team member, stop and ask yourself, is this a performance issue or is it a delivery issue? That one question can save you a conversation that pushes someone out the door. So the gaps are real. The question is, what do you actually do about them? It starts with acknowledgement, then action. Here's where most leaders get it wrong. They skip straight to the solutions: new mentorship programs, updated onboarding, communication training, without ever doing the one thing that makes any of it work: actually acknowledging that the problem exists. You cannot bridge a gap you refuse to see, and construction is full of leaders who will privately admit that generational friction is costing them people, but publicly treat it as something that will sort itself out. It won't. And the data from the last episode tells you exactly what that denial is costing. Acknowledgement doesn't mean you have to customize your entire operation for every individual. That would be chaos. But it does mean making a conscious shift from "I'm going to treat everyone the same way because that's fair" to "I'm going to pay attention to what each person needs to do their best work." Those are 2 very different leadership postures, and only one of them retains people. Let's look at a practical example. You've got a crew of mixed experience, a 28-year-old apprentice and a 55-year-old journeyman. Same project, same deadline, but if you give them the exact same communication, the exact same feedback cadence, the exact same expectations about how to raise a concern, you're probably going to lose one of them. Not because either one is difficult, because you led them both as if they were the same person, and they're not. We cannot expect the next generation of workers to accept the same conditions their parents and grandparents went through what they went through, so the next generation wouldn't have to. And now we're frustrated that it worked? This lands squarely on leadership. Lastly, bridge the gap or pay for it. This isn't about being nice, it's about being smart. The construction industry has a shrinking labor pool, an aging workforce, and a generation of incoming workers who have more options than any generation before them. If your organization cannot figure out how to connect with different types of people, someone else will. 3 things leaders can do immediately. Audit your communication, not just what you say, but how and where you say it. Are you relying on one communication style for a multi-generational crew? What are you missing? Create structured knowledge transfer moments. Pair experienced workers with newer ones, intentionally, not randomly. Give the senior person a reason to invest in the relationship, and give the newer person a reason to stay for it. Ask the question you probably never asked a younger crew member. What does growth look like for you here? If you don't know the answer, you cannot retain them, because someone else will ask the question for you. The strength of a multi-generational workforce is not that everyone is the same, it's that everyone is different. The knowledge, the perspective, the energy, it's all there. The leader's job is to make sure it connects instead of collides. The generational gap in construction is real. The differences in how people live, work, and communicate are real. And if you lead a team of any size in this industry, those differences are showing up on your projects whether you're paying attention to them or not. You solve it the same way you solve most leadership problems, by paying attention, by being honest about where your assumptions end and someone else's experience begins. Here is one thing I want you to take away from this episode. This week, pick one person on your team who's different generation than you. And instead of leading them the way you'd want to be led, ask them how they need to be led. Ask what clarity looks like for them. Ask what would make them want to stay. You might not love every answer, but I promise you, you'll learn something, and that conversation alone is worth more than 100 job postings. I'm Angelo Suntries. This is the human side of construction. Let's get to work. There's a lot to do. If you're a leader in the construction industry and want to discuss how you are addressing workforce challenges in your organizations, or if you have a construction experience that you want to share with the world, we want to hear from you. Reach out to me at angelo@hsoc.one, that's ANGELO @hsoc.one, to see how we can work together.